Today we're going to be speaking with Felix. This young man made a bad decision at some point in his life, and it caused someone to end their life. We're going to have a real conversation because we need to make a plea to all of those shooters in the city of Philadelphia and around the world. It is time to stop gun violence. Welcome to the show, Felix. Felix, tell me a little bit about your childhood and where you went to school in Philly.
I did not go to school in Philly, Melanie. I was raised in Reading, Pennsylvania, where my grandmother migrated to with 15 of her 16 children in the early 70s. I went to school at 10th and Green Elementary, Tyson Shaner Elementary, Southwest Middle School, and Reading High. I loved school as a kid. I was a straight A student. I was deemed gifted. But then somewhere around middle school, I lost interest in what was happening in the classroom and started becoming more intrigued with what was going on my way to and from school.
In the streets?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you got to high school, or let's say your 18th year, what was your grades? What was your behaviors? Who were you hanging out with?
Yeah. Well, by the time I got to high school, I was cutting a lot of school. I was showing up here and there. I was getting sucked into the streets pretty hard by that time. So I was selling drugs in my neighborhood. And yeah, I was basically just showing up to meet the minimum requirement to get from one grade to the next. In 12th grade, I was actually arrested in school for having a box cutter in my coat pocket in my locker. And I got taken into custody, and while there, some sales I had made to an undercover popped up as well. So I ended up doing a few months in a juvenile detention center. I was released because I had a juvenile probation officer who took a serious interest in my case and pleaded with the judge to give me an opportunity to finish school. And so some exceptions were made. I was released on intensive probation, and I actually did what I had to do to graduate from high school, but never changed my thinking or my behavior. And 6 short months later, ended up in jail as an adult for a crime that had me stay there for 27 years.
Let me go back. Tell me what your home life was like. Was mom and dad very active in your life?
Well, my father left shortly after I was born. I was raised by a stepfather who did his best, but he wasn't a good communicator, and I lacked a lot of things in my household that should have been provided by a father. But overall, my family did the best they can. I have a huge family, so a lot of people were involved in my life. My aunts, cousins, my grandmother. So I don't, take too much issue with my upbringing when it comes to my family. But the problem was that I was more strongly influenced by what was going on in my neighborhood outside of the house. And that's where all the problems began.
18 years old, you made a decision, and that decision cost you 27 years of your life. And that's what changed your life. Let's talk about what happened when you were 18 years old.
Well, I moved out of mom's house shortly after my 18th birthday, and started doing a lot of things I wasn't able to do when I lived at home, and my drug selling increased as I climbed up the ladder in that business, and more problems started coming my way. And eventually I started carrying guns and then using them, and committed a murder in December of 1995 that landed me in jail the following day. And I was just released from that sentence a little over 5 months ago.
When you were selling drugs, did you actually use them also? The day you took that precious life, were you in your right state of mind? Do you remember that day? Did that day change your life? Or was it at some other point where you actually sat down and said, I actually took a human life?
Yeah. Uh, I was not using the same drugs that I sold, but I smoked a lot of marijuana, and I drank. And I was actually in a blackout state at the time of the murder, uh, the details of which are still vague in my mind. Uh, I woke up the next morning, got dressed, knew something bad had happened, but just wasn't sure exactly what it was, and had a gut feeling that that I was responsible for that. Uh, I got dressed. I came down the steps of my apartment building and was greeted by the barrel of 10 or so uh, weapons. I was arrested, taken into custody, spent a whole day in interrogation rooms, and eventually taken to the county jail. I kind of had like a moment at first where I started to reflect a little bit on what had happened, how I had ended up there. But I was still young. I was 18. I was in the middle of a fight for my freedom. Uh, I like to say that the system is actually the antithesis of accountability. It doesn't promote honesty in any way, truth telling, concrete action towards putting things more right. I had to lie. I had to say that I didn't do it, because like everyone who watches any crime show or TV or movie, we know that if you start telling the truth, once the cuffs get slapped on, you're going to find yourself in a world of trouble in a hurry. So we create alternate narratives of what happened, say we didn't do it, whatever. It's hardly ever the truth. So I was caught up in that cycle for a bit. It prevented me from actually taking a deep dive into what happened and the harm I committed. Once I got sentenced to death by incarceration, more commonly known as life without parole, I was sent upstate and ended up at Graterford State Prison. Once I got there, I realized that what the judge referred to as life without parole really meant death. I was encountered immediately by men who had been there 20, 30, 35 years, and my 18-year-old brain couldn't even fathom someone being caged twice as long as I was alive. I tried to challenge my conviction through the appeal process. That went nowhere fast, and quickly despair replaced any hope I had went there with. And I started smoking weed again. Soon was back up to my marijuana habit from the street. Yeah. And I spent about 9 years just getting into trouble, cycling in and out of the restricted housing unit, aka the hole. And in 2004, at age 27, is when I had what I like to refer to as my awakening. I realized that the way I was doing things wasn't working and that I had to try something different. I decided, first of all, to stop getting high. And I know it sounds cliche, but the whole world just opened up after that. I was able to see clearly. I started to get back into my law work. Long story short, I found my way back into court and started to feel a little more hopeful. But after about 2 years of that, there still seemed to be something that was missing. And I decided to get involved in a program that they had at Gradeford at the time, talking to boys from a nearby juvenile hall, St. Gabriel's. And so they would bring groups of boys into the prison once a month to hear from a group of us about what their lives might look like if they continue going down the path that they were on. And the first time I was able to participate in this program and share my story, something changed inside me. I realized that despite having been sentenced to die in a cage, despite being behind a 30-foot high concrete wall, I could still have a positive impact on someone's life. And it gave me purpose, it gave me meaning, and it launched me into a life of service that I haven't turned back from to this day. That was in 2007. From there, I went on to enroll in a college program at the prison, and I took a class called Inside Out that was offered through Temple University at the time. And one of the weekly readings was a book titled Transcending, which is a photo essay book of crime victims, mostly parents of murdered children. And I still remember, as if it was yesterday, sitting on my bunk in my cell one sunny afternoon with the book spread across my lap, turning page after page, looking at image after image and reading heart-wrenching story after story, and beginning to cry because I had realized that I had caused a family the same pain that I was reading about. And it's something that I avoided thinking about for all those years until that afternoon. And it really hit me in a new way. And at the end of the book, the author started talking about this thing called restorative justice, which I had never heard of. It seemed very revolutionary, you know, a way of doing justice that seeks to heal harm by involving those who were directly impacted by it, yeah, including those who caused it, right? Just totally mind-blowing concept to me. And so it piqued my interest. That interest quickly became a passion. And then as fate would have it, I met another brother at the prison who had a similar passion. And his name is Charles Boyd. I definitely want to lift him up right now. He's still fighting his death by incarceration behind the wall. And we came together and co-founded a restorative justice project that we later named Let's Circle Up, which brought me into contact with you down the line, and also gave us an opportunity to introduce as many people as possible to restorative justice and to the insight and the awakening that occurred with me on that afternoon in my cell reading the book Transcending. So
amazing.
We went on to develop a series of workshops, and the program unfortunately hasn't been able to continue since COVID on the inside, but I actually just facilitated my first Let's Circle Up workshop on the outside a couple months ago.
So it was amazing when I was invited to Gradeford, which is now Phoenix.
Yeah.
And I did not know what to expect when I went in. And of course, I had the pleasure of meeting you and some other wonderful young men. That workshop was unbelievable. But I remember the first workshop, and at the end of the workshop, and us sitting in a circle. And I said this, it's amazing to me that I think all of you are beautiful. But to the family of the person that you've caused harm to, or to the person that unfortunately lost their life, all of you are monsters to them. So I think restorative justice is important. Now, when you came to realize what you did and how you caused harm to a family, did you ever try to reach out to that family to make amends?
Yeah. The the prison system and the criminal legal system in general prevents that kind of contact for understandable reasons.
Yes.
But it just wasn't, possible. I would love to have the opportunity at some point to face them and apologize and to offer myself up to them in any way. As a restorative justice practitioner and one who facilitates restorative community conferences in my current job, I get, the absolute honor of witnessing the kind of transformation that these encounters produce. And I would just love nothing more than and be grateful for the opportunity to one day do something like that regarding the harm that I caused.
Tell me how your family was through this whole process. Here it is that their loved one actually took a life. How was that? Were they saying to you everything's okay, or were they saying to you, you did something that caused so much harm? We're here for you, but we can't ignore what you did, and we'll help you get back on the right track.
Yeah, thank you for that question, because that's a part of the story that often gets untold, and it's the impact of incarceration on families. My mother, since the day the detectives came knocking on her door to tell her that her son, who had so much promise, was in jail for murder, was in a lot of ways incarcerated too, until just 5 months ago. Me walking out of that prison freed not only me, but freed her. She suffered every second of those 27 years right alongside me. And I attribute my transformation largely to her. She was there from the beginning, just sending me Bible tracts to read, just trying to bring me, back home. To where I should have never left. And eventually all that hard work and all that prayer worked. And so, we ended up talking actually like years after my arrest about what the impact on all this has been on her. We were sitting in the visit room one day, and she told me the story of how she left her job in Center City to go work somewhere else because of the shame, the stigma, all of the things that comes with being the loved one of not only just an incarcerated person, but someone who was incarcerated for murder. So we got to have that conversation, and that was part of the motivation for where my life went, as well as all of the other things.
So you're now free. Tell me how that happened, and tell me what you're doing today to help those young people that decide that gun violence is a way to solve their problems.
Yeah. So I was released through governor clemency, which is the rarest form of release there is. It's one of the only ways to escape a death by incarceration sentence. I decided to apply in 2017 when Governor Wolf came into office and commuted a couple people. Shortly after, took a bunch of years for my application to move through the process. In 2020, 2 months after the prison got locked down for COVID, I was taken up for merit review, and I was granted a public hearing, which I had in September of 2020. I was denied at that point by 2 votes from the Board of Pardons. I needed all 5. I applied for reconsideration in 2021. That also was denied. And then in 2022, I decided to file for a second reconsideration request. That one was taken up, another hearing was granted. And this time I got the 5 votes I needed. Uh, on July 14th of this year, Governor Wolf signed signed off on my release, and on July 18th, I walked out of SCI Phoenix, a free man for the first time since age of 18. I started working almost immediately, a week after I got out, unofficially, and 2 weeks after I got out officially, here at the Youth Art and Self-Empowerment Project as program coordinator of Healing Futures, which is a youth restorative justice diversion program. We get our referrals from the district attorney's office of young people who've been arrested and who qualify for diversion. We meet with the young people and their caregivers. We get them to enroll in the program, and then we meet with the people harmed in whatever the situation was, with the hope of getting them to enroll as well. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's totally their choice and their right. When they do choose to participate, we meet with them. We continue to meet with the responsible youth. We hook them both up with our social work director, who is amazing and who is an encyclopedia of resources, who hooks them up with as much as possible to address all of the many needs that people on both sides of a harm equation have. And we continue to meet with the responsible youth for like 9 weekly sessions to talk about values, to talk about accountability, to talk about the difference between a good and bad apology. And then we help them craft an apology letter. At the end of that whole process, we come to a restorative community conference where we bring everyone together, including some community members, 2 facilitators from the Healing Futures team, and we have a circle. And we talk about what happened, and we talk about the impact of what happened, and we give the responsible youth an opportunity to read their apology letter. And then together, we all come up with a restorative plan. It's a concrete action that the youth then has to complete to put things, as we like to say, more right. It's usually some kind of volunteering. It has to relate to the harm in some way. It has to be something that they can actually achieve. And there's a timeline on it. It's not something that goes on and on like the system does. So once they complete their plan, we report back to the DAO, and the charges get declined. And our hope is that these young people can continue with their lives without the stain of a record or without having to have spent any time in a cage and all the trauma that comes with that. So I love my job. I love coming to work every day. It's hard work. It's emotional work. It's draining, but it's worth it. Because I see in these young people myself. And oftentimes I find myself wondering what would have happened if an intervention like this would have been available to me when I was going through the juvenile system. And so that's my motivation. That's what I hop out of bed every morning ready to do.
That's awesome. Felix, we're living at a time today in the city of Philadelphia where we're seeing so many young African-American men and women, so many young brown, young men and women who are being killed. And I'm talking 14, 15, 16. It's just so heartbreaking. Being shot multiple times. It's time for gun violence to stop in the city of Philadelphia. Felix, because you have been there, what plea do you have for all of those young people who decide to pick up a gun and end the life, the precious life of someone else?
Yeah. Well, I understand. You know, we feel helpless, we feel hopeless, we feel powerless, and in a lot of ways, violence is our only currency. You know, we're taught in our society that violence is the answer, right? It's in our media, it's in our music, It's everywhere. It's in our culture. It's in our systems. But what we don't understand is the impact of that. And if I can try to express that to anyone who's listening, I want people to understand that what might seem like the right thing or the only thing to do in any given moment will have an impact on so many lives for so many years and decades and generations that cannot be undone. There are so many other ways to handle conflict, and though it might not seem at the time that there are any, there are alternatives, and we just need to take our time, slow things down a little bit, and think about what could happen once that trigger gets pulled. That bullet could not come back into that gun. Once it comes out, it's going to cause immeasurable pain to a lot of people, including those who pulled the trigger. That pain comes back in one way or another, sometimes even harsher than the pain that we inflicted.
Felix, I thank you so much for sharing your story. I thank you so much for the work that you are doing. And I thank you that you had that conscience to say, I took someone's life. Now I need to change my life. And now I want to help those who may make the same mistake I did. I don't want them to do that. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Well, my life is my apology. And I just appreciate, having the opportunity to come here and talk with you. I'm so happy that we met, however many years ago that was, inside the most unlikely of places. But here we are now, trying to make a difference, and it's all we can do.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Sometimes we make decisions that will change our life, and it will change our family members' lives. And sometimes it will change someone else's life and their family members' lives. Philadelphia is a great city. It is time to put down the guns. It is time to stop gun violence. Remember, the power of one starts with you. Peace and blessings.